So why did you write the book? I mean, that's you've got so many things you could talk about. I want to make sure we stay on message here.
Right.
As to, yeah, well, you and I could go forever, and we'll do this again.
I hope so.
But the idea of, okay, your purpose is, and I love this, gospel of hard work plus generous giving. What a beautiful phrase. What gave you the idea that, not where did you learn this, but why did you say, I've got to get this into a book? I've got to get this message out. There's something about either the way you say it or the passion you feel about it, something that this is a unique thing. You feel like, I got to get this word out.
It was a great, that's such a great question, Mike. Thank you. It was a combination of two things. The first is, as a pastor, when I'm reading the gospel to my congregation, there are some very tough lessons that Jesus taught his apostles and followers. The one that you just mentioned, the rich fool, right? The other one, classically, is the rich young ruler who's followed the commandments his whole life and says, Jesus, I've done all of these things my whole life. What else is there for me to do to get into your kingdom? And he says, it's easy. Sell everything you have and follow me. How do we then, right? Oh, yeah. And then what happens? He goes away sad because he has lots of things. When I'm reading that gospel lesson to my congregation, my little one now, or bigger ones that I've had in the past when we were worshiping in buildings in the old days, I know the people who are hearing that message, the good news. And many of them are wealthy. Many of them are wealthy because they're financial advisors to wealthy people. So they're wealthy, helping others become wealthy. And when I tell them, Jesus said, sell everything you had, or even more simply, Jesus said it's easier for a rich man to get into heaven, or a camel to get through the eye of a needle, than a rich man to get in heaven. They're looking at me like, well, what do I do now? Right? Does that mean I give everything away? And the way we analyze it in the book, Mike, is don't give everything away. Frankly, if you did give everything away, did exactly what Jesus suggested to the young ruler, my thought is that that's not loving your neighbor because you're making yourself a burden to your neighbor. Instead,
yeah, because you got nothing, you got to pay your bills.
Exactly. Instead, take the wealth, whatever it is that God has given you, take the blessings that God has given you and share them generously with the poor and needy in the name of Jesus Christ. And listen, another key concept of the Christian capitalist, because we've talked a lot about wealth and small business owners, doesn't matter how much wealth you have. You know, the giving pledge is for people with 9 zeros, but anybody can be a Christian capitalist, which is why one of the key stories from the Gospels in our book is the widow's mite, where Jesus and the apostles are hanging out in the synagogue, and there's this parade of rich people in all their fine robes who are given to the treasury of the synagogue. And this woman comes in with just 2 coins that together aren't even worth a penny. And she gives that and she says, look at this. She gave more than everybody else because that's all she had. Anybody can be a Christian capitalist. Whether it's here's one I was thinking of the other day, Mike. Whether it's Bill Gates or the guy who guards the gate at Microsoft, right? You can be a Christian you be a Christian capitalist regardless of how much you have. It's a spirit of generosity.
Isn't it interesting? And I don't want to get political here, but I look at the current trends and you know, verbiage coming out of particularly younger people. There's a sort of a misunderstanding, number one, of what capitalism is, but there's also kind of a disdain for it.
Yeah.
And so the capitalist, first of all, but a Christian capitalist, I'll pitch this to you and you can swing at it, but I'm hearing you say, guys, it's just not about being wealthy. It's not about being rich in financial means. I mean, you could be, as you say, you could be. I hope you will be, as long as you use it right.
Right.
But this is not about, you know, capitalists are not necessarily rich. That's what the young people hear. Oh, you're just a rich, selfish capitalist.
Right.
Those words don't necessarily go together. You could be a rich, selfish socialist. The question is, are you a generous person?
That's right.
Has God unlocked your heart to share what He's blessing you with those around you?
That's exactly right. And so that's the other theme. Earlier, I did my knuckles like this because there were 2 things that came together 5 years ago when I started writing this book. The first was watching the faces of the people in the congregation as I read these tough lessons in the gospel. The second is just the way things are going in our country. And by the way, the Christian capitalist, I'm going to show this here for those who are watching on video. The Christian capitalist is color green. It's not black or white. It's not red or blue. It's about love and love of neighbor. All right. But having
Yeah.
said that, there are two kind of groups of people that I've encountered as I talk about this title. The first are Christians who have been conditioned by academics, theologians, basically philosophers since World War II, call it the last 80 years, who have been conditioned to think that the best way to be a Christian is to be a socialist. And of course, I respectfully disagree. But I'm telling you, man, as I've been talking about this title, as people have bought the book, we're getting people who say, "Hey, that's me. I want to be a Christian capitalist, or I am one." There are a whole bunch of Christians in this first category who say, "Oh, that's funny. I didn't know you could be both." And it's
Yeah.
because
That's kind of what.
right, right, and it's because there are folks who are writing about this and saying, Jesus really wanted everybody to have the same amount. And frankly, in Acts chapter 2, Peter, who heard every word of Jesus' ministry, heard all the preaching and all the lessons, Peter starts a what we call in our book a communal living experiment in Jerusalem, where, and I know you
Yeah.
know this phrase because you're a man of God, right? And you've heard it many times, where everything was given according to their ability and was distributed according to their need. But that experiment failed miserably. 2 chapters later, Peter's saying, "Hey, it's not for us to wait on table. We need some deacons around here." And then that whole thing with Ananias and Sapphira, where they didn't give
Yeah.
as much as they were supposed to, yeah, that didn't work out well
Yeah.
for them.
I was going to say, I think the point that one point that people take away that they miss there is that the communal living was voluntary, right? It was
Yes.
not legislated or enforced through
Yes.
coercion, and they wanted to share.